Hello, my name is Dr. Roger Elmer. I run Advanced Neurospinal Solutions. I'm a chiropractor. I'm also a structural correction specialist specializing in the advanced version of the Pedibond system, which we call the functional orthokinetics. I'm also a board certified functional chiropractor that specializes in functional neurology. And this series is a series called Biomechanics Made Ridiculously Simple Yet Totally Understandable. And it's put together for doctors, for students, for educators, and even for patients, so they can understand clearly what the spinal structure does and how it functions, and also some of the ramifications of some of the therapies that have been done in the past and how they affect function. This is the appendix for that series, and so it will contain the videos that were used. The videos come from Spinal Engine 2 from Sergei Grasovetsky. Great job, Sergei. Amazing. Dr. Grasovetsky did an amazing job on Spinal Engine 1 and Spinal Engine 2. These are the videos that go with it that show different aspects of spinal function. And so we're going to show all of these so you don't have to pick through and look for them for each of the videos. You can just come to this part of the series. There will be at least somewhere between 6 to 8 videos on spinal biomechanics, picking it apart, making it more understandable, utilizing mostly Sergei Grasovetsky's work, and we'll have some PowerPoints that go with that. Later on, we'll also include an entire series on the extrapyramidal nervous system, on Alf Brieg and the spinal model. So what we're going to show first, this video is an example, a model of an annular tear and what it takes to tear the annulus fibrosus. You're going to watch the video as it shows the stress that must happen in order to create an annular tear. Notice how it gives. That's a retaining structure. We'll show it one more time. The retaining structure has to have the amount of stress, also the properties relating to the circumstance that leads to the tear. And here we have the giving way of that tissue. So that's what that looks like. Next, we're going to show a cheetah running and a hummingbird. Notice the lordotic curve, and then as the cheetah starts running, he's taking it into hyperlordosis, hyperkyphosis. We'll discuss that in just a second here. Here's a hummingbird. The curve in its neck allows it to be its head to be independent of the thoracic spine to hold on target and therefore be able to get what it needs for survival here. Without that curve, when the hummingbird's thoracic cage moves, the head would move and it would starve to death. Now back to the cheetah. Notice the lordotic curve here already has the lordosis. This is the base foundation of the lordotic curve, and he's going to take this, he or she, probably hunting, it's probably a she, out there looking for some kind of food for a family. That curve is going to be accentuated into a hyperlordosis by musculature that creates that, and then it's going to bounce off the ligaments in front. We talk about this in how the system functions. Then it's going to reverse into a hyperkyphotic curve, and then it stretch the ligaments, so the muscles will actually work to create that, throw the energy into the ligaments so that it can bounce back, and it will bounce back and forth between hyperkyphosis, hyperlordosis, and propel the pelvis, and the pelvis is the main driver and the legs are just extensions. The old model is that the arms and legs are what we work with, or what we walk with, and we're going to show that is completely untrue. That is the spinal system. And then when we get into the extrapyramidal nervous system, we're going to show that neurologically it begins from the midline, from the center core, from a neurological point of view. But here it is again, so for your watching pleasure. Notice how he's trotting now. He's engaging the spinal system, and he's going 70 miles an hour. And he's going to catch the bunny rabbit. Okay, and here once again is the hummingbird. And notice how he can stay on target even though his body is going all over the place in 3 dimensions. And so her family's going to be very happy when he comes home. Okay. Next, we're going to look at the fascia, particularly the thoracolumbar fascia. We're going to be spending some time, very exciting. Spinal Engine is the most exciting book on biomechanics I ever read, and how it presents the thoracolumbar fascia, how it functions, even though it is a non-contractile tissue. It's innervated from a sensory point of view, but it is not contractile. But because of its link into the transverse abdominis, it's going to, by contraction of the transverse abdominis, it's going to accentuate the curve and stabilize that lordotic curve. Very exciting how it works. And we're going to talk about that in one of the modules. Here we go again. Notice how when it's stretched, it accentuates that curve, supports it, gives it its stability. The stability of that structure is the stability of the entire structure. And particularly that lower back, because we stand up against gravity, we need that stability to stand up against. And we have another video about that same fascia. Here we go again. Now we're seeing how it's brought forward and it creates a flexive activity. We're going to use it from a flexion point of view as we bring things forward. Change the mechanics, change the function. Very exciting, very cool. We'll show it again. We'll see flexion in the sagittal plane there. There we go, very good. And it's lending stability in that direction. This next one is an example of a fast walk. An elite fast walker. We're going to watch him walk away. Notice how the spinal system is functioning. Much of the movement is, the movement is generated from the spinal system, creating the movement of the shoulders and hips in 3 dimensions. And look at him take off. That poor old man didn't have a chance. There you go. Extra points if you know where that is. Okay, let's watch it one more time. We're watching each of these twice. Very good. Now, we're going to watch a gentleman walk without arms or legs, which kind of dispels that whole concept. That we walk from the arms and legs. Here we're seeing the lateral flexion system, and the lateral flexion system is generating rotation. That is coupling. Coupling, we usually say, is lateral flexion and rotation go together, but that's not what it means functionally. Functionally, it means when we have the curved system, kyphosis, lordosis, we're going to take and convert lateral flexion energy into rotation. That's how the system really functions. So having the curves, we have these big broad-based lateral flexors. The trapezius, right? The latissimus dorsi goes down to L3 here, and then the quadratus lumborum. And when we contract those muscles, if we contract this here, the left quadratus lumborum, we're going to get a left lateral flexion, and we'll get a clockwise rotation every time as long as we have the curved system. So we're depending upon the curved system to generate it. If we don't have that curve, then lateral flexion is lateral flexion. And you've seen it. I mean, that's how an ape walks, because an ape doesn't have that curve. Well, we need that curve in order to convert that energy. If it is reversed, it creates even worse of a problem because it creates the opposite effect. And neurologically, as we get into the extrapyramidal nervous system, neurologically it becomes wired in reverse. That's why we have the problem in scoliosis, because they've lost that sagittal plane curve. They wind up with a problem that we call Red Queen phenomenon, where the brain tells the system to do something and it does the opposite. Well, it's become wired that way because the mechanics are opposite of what they should be. And so the mechanics did the opposite, therefore the wiring became the opposite. So here we're going to watch it again. We're going to watch each of these 2 times. Here he is again. You can see the lateral flexion systems as he walks, as he propels himself forward. Very good. Now we're going to see him from another plane. See him from the lateral plane. Do it one more time, then we're going to watch it combine. Watch it again. Very good. Now we're going to watch a lizard running on water. Notice how we've got a lateral flexion. We're not going to get into the rotation of the pelvis, so there's a slight rotation, but this is a lateral flexor system. This is the beginning crawling system where we have to develop our lateral crawling system, not just the muscles, but particularly the neurology that drives it. And so we call it the lizard crawl in neurology. I like to call it the army man crawl. It's like crawling under barbed wire. That system is creating the neurology, I mean the muscles, but more importantly the neurology that's going to drive that lateral flexion system. And as we just learned, the coupling is lateral flexion gets ground into rotation. So the better the lateral flexor system is, whether we're discussing it like PTs as the muscle system or neurologists that are talking about the neurology of it, or you're talking about functional people who are looking at both systems. However we look at it, we need that lateral flexion system to be as optimal and tough as possible, and so that we have the best diadochokinetic system or cross crawl system available, because it depends upon that lateral flexion system. Let's look at it again. Look at that lateral flexion system. They're going laterally, crawling like a lizard. And so that's the lateral flexion part that we need to develop to have the best, most profound, like we say in functional neurology, the most robust pathways to generate what will eventually be the coupling mechanism and therefore the cross-crawl system. Here we have a lioness. Obviously she's doing all the work. It's a woman. And we're looking at the lordosis, kyphosis. Now we're going to look at it from the side, and we're going to combine it with a lifter. Look at how we're going to go from a lordosis to a kyphosis. We're going to come back up. We're going to see the interrelationship between the two and how we utilize that system. We're utilizing that system for stability, but more importantly, we're using it to optimize our function to get the maximum output. Minimum input in, maximum output out. That's like a machine, right? If you have a machine and we put a quarter in and nothing comes out, we call that government. If we put a quarter in and a quarter comes out, that's not a very good machine. But if we put a quarter in and 5 come out, that's good. But let's say we put a quarter in and we get 50 out, 50 quarters out. That's a good machine. Well, we have systems in play that when they're developed the way they're supposed to be, we're going to put a little in and we get force multiplier effect. And so that amplifier effect is because of the engineering of the spine itself. And we're going to get not only into that in spinal engine, but particularly in spinal model. Some of the many reasons why it's so important. The normal model is so important. Okay, and next we'll look at just lioness, and then we'll do the Muppets. And then it'll be the Muppet Show. All right, here's the lioness again. Lordosis, kyphosis, hyperlordosis, hyperkyphosis, as she propels herself after the game. Okay, and then we're showing others that have the same model, same system. You want maximum optimal output from minimal input. Okay, we'll play that again. Very good. Now we're going to watch two more videos called The Muppets. This is going to describe the energy that inputs from the shock, the compressive load when you're the heel strike, how important that is. It rides up that shock or energy, rides up the entire structure, and in the spine it causes the spine to become very rigid vertically but very efficient as a rotator. If you've ever walked on sand or run on sand, it is very difficult because we don't have that compressive force, that concussive force that creates the force that creates that rigidity. And we want that rigidity in order to make it more efficient. We're basically causing it to become as effective as possible with the heel strike. And so soft shoes can be disastrous. You know, just like soft beds, soft chairs, all those things are killing us. Well, this concussive force is very important. Also imagine that this concussion, according to Wolff's law, is causing an internal infrastructure change on the bone. Let's say we get the bone strong by lifting weights, but it's not adept at receiving concussive type forces. Concussion has a different effect than just loading the bones. And so if I have a strong structure but a weak concussive ability, I could potentially get a fracture by just a ding or somebody smacks me just the wrong way. And so so often we're trying to avoid those high impact, right? That's been the vogue for quite some time. We do low impact as though that's an educated thing, right? Well, by low impact, we're causing the bone to become weaker in its structure. Not only do we need to load it, but we need to have it experience over time concussive forces that cause it to get tougher to concussion, to a harsh effect like that. I'm going to play it one more time. I know we played it, I think this is the third time, but it bears seeing it over and over again, because this is a really important factor in the efficiency of the spine, along with all the other factors that we go over. Okay, and this is the last video we're going to show. Thank you, Dr. Grasovetsky. These are brilliant. One of the best investments I made buying Spinal Engine 1 and Spinal Engine 2. Okay, here's the lateral flexion. Here's where we're making a lordosis and into kyphosis. This is a walking system. This is what walking looks like. Now we're looking at it at a third dimension on an angle where we're seeing both the lordotic changes and we're seeing some of from the coronal plane. So we'll do it. We're going to do this one several times. This will be our last video that we show. Okay, there's the coronal plane. We're seeing lateral flexion that happens through the lateral flexor muscle system and their neurology that makes it happen. There we're making more lordosis, less lordosis, and this is the combined effect. This is what walking is supposed to look like in the lumbar spine. Let's play it again. Okay, we're seeing it. Lateral flexions are going to generate rotations. We're also going to make the curve and decrease the curve, but we have to have a curve to start with, right? We have to have a base level normal biomechanical curve in order to go into a greater curve and then to a lesser curve. Most people never develop the curve in the first place because of swings, Johnny jump ups, walkers, and just walking too soon. Then they have incredibly horrible postural positions over long periods of time, which remolds the discs. There we go. And we're going to watch it one more time, and that will be the end of the appendix. Right? One more. There we go. Lateral flexion, sagittal plane, kyphosis, lordosis, lordosis, kyphosis. Now we're putting it together at an angle and watching both of them, how it functions. That's how it should look. Hope you had fun, and you can come back to this video over and over again and watch the different videos on here and review and get in your mind. I think the most valuable thing I got from Dr. Grasovetsky's work was a three-dimensional model in my mind of how this system works. And it is definitely so exciting how it all functions together and how we develop all of it at the same time through our crawling system. Hope you had fun. Thanks. Bye.